Welcome back. We've been digging into Alan Gavrilyuk's book, Social Cognition, The Construction of the Self in Social Contexts. And it's really been quite something.
It really has.
But today, we're zooming in, chapter 13. It tackles, well, something huge. Love.
Ah, yes, love, the big one. Our mission, if you will, is to sort of unpack how Gavrilyuk approaches it.
Right. The feelings, the thoughts, maybe even some deeper evolutionary stuff that's going on when we connect with someone romantically.
Exactly. And listeners might find some of these ideas pretty surprising, maybe even change how you think about your own relationships.
Okay, so where do we start? The book points out something pretty obvious when you think about it. It's just darn hard to define love, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Gavrilyuk talks about this charge of mystery and irrationality.
Yeah, that feels right. It's not like defining, I don't know, a chair.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how its importance has shifted, culturally speaking. The chapter mentions these surveys. Back in '67, a fair few men said they'd marry someone they didn't love if other things lined up.
Really? That sounds so transactional now.
Right. But then fast forward to 1980, and boom, that number just tanks for men and women. Love became like the main requirement.
Wow, that's a massive shift in just over a decade. It really shows how much our ideas about relationships change.
Totally. And it wasn't just marriage. A survey in '93 found most North Americans felt they were in love. So it's clearly, central to how we see ourselves and others.
So it's central, but still hard to pin down. Did the chapter offer any kind of working definition?
Well, it mentions one from Barron and Byrne from '97. They sort of define it as friendship that evolves into a sexual partnership.
Okay. Friendship plus sex. That covers some ground, I guess.
It does, but it feels a little clinical, maybe. Gavrilyuk points out it kind of misses that buzz, the ineffable thrill.
Yeah. And what about trust? Loyalty? Those seem pretty key.
Exactly, those deeper elements. He also mentions a common thread when people describe being in love is this internalization of intense emotions in the presence of the loved one.
Right, like everything just feels dialed up when they're around. Your whole system reacts.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Which leads us neatly into one of the really fascinating parts, looking at love through the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory of emotion.
Ah, okay. I remember this from Psych 101, kind of. Remind us how it works.
So the core idea is two steps. First, you get some kind of physiological arousal. Your body reacts, heart pounds, maybe you flush, palms sweat, whatever.
Step 1, body goes haywire. Got it.
Step 2, your brain kicks in and tries to interpret why. It scans the context, pulls in social cues, cultural definitions, and slaps a label on that arousal.
So if I'm with someone attractive and my heart's racing, my brain might go, aha, attractive person plus racing heart equals love.
Exactly. It's that cognitive label, that interpretation that turns the generic physical feeling into the specific emotion we call love.
And without that label,
it's at a racing heart. Gavrilyuk uses the example of climbing stairs quickly or being cold. Same physical signs maybe, but you don't think I'm in love with these stairs?
Huh, right. Because the context is totally different. Your brain labels it exertion or cold.
Precisely. Context is everything. The chapter references some older studies too, like Marinon's work with epinephrine injections.
Epinephrine, like adrenaline, makes your heart race.
Yeah. And when people knew the injection was causing the physical feelings, they didn't label it as an emotion. They just said, oh, the drug is doing this. They had a non-emotional explanation.
No need for an emotional label then.
Exactly. Then you have the really famous Schachter-Singer experiment itself, the one with the adrenaline, but some people weren't told about the side effects.
And they put them in a room with an actor who is either really happy or really angry.
That's the one. And the people who didn't have an explanation for their racing hearts, they basically caught the emotion of the actor.
So if the actor was euphoric, they felt euphoric, and if the actor was furious, they felt angry.
Yep. They misattributed their unexplained arousal to the social situation. Their brain needed a reason for the feeling, and the actor's mood provided it.
Wow. So it wasn't the drug making them happy or angry. It was their brain's interpretation of the drug's effects in that specific context.
You got it. And Gavrilyuk connects this directly to relationship dynamics. Think about, say, premenstrual irritability.
Uh-oh. Where's this going?
Well, someone might feel physically on edge due to hormones, right?
Mm-hmm.
But their partner might just see the resulting crabbiness and think, wow, they're just being completely insufferable today.
Ah, okay. So the partner misattributes the cause. They blame the person's mood, not the underlying physical state. That's the attribution error the chapter mentions.
Exactly that, mistakenly assigning the cause. Blaming the partner's personality instead of, say, hormones or even just a bad night's sleep, causing that physical arousal or tension.
It really makes you wonder how often that happens in relationships. Misreading the signals?
Constantly, probably. Misinterpreting our own internal states even.
Okay, so our interpretation of arousal is huge. But then things get even weirder, right? The chapter brings in Sharon Brem's idea about uncertainty.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Brem's model basically suggests that feeling not totally secure in a partner's commitment can actually keep the intensity going.
Wait, so being a bit unsure keeps you more
aroused, yeah. If their love isn't a 100% sure thing, but it's not totally lost either, that uncertainty can maintain a level of physiological arousal, which you then interpret as really strong love.
That feels so backwards. You'd think security would be the goal.
You would, wouldn't you? But maybe a little tension keeps things charged. The classic example given is the Romeo and Juliet effect.
Ah, the forbidden love trope?
Right. The idea is that the parental opposition, the obstacles, actually increase their arousal, stress, anxiety, defiance, whatever, and they mislabeled all that heightened feeling as even deeper love for each other.
So the drama literally fueled the passion. Wow.
That's the theory. And it extends beyond just external obstacles. Gavrilyuk mentions that even painful or upsetting experiences with the loved one can sometimes paradoxically increase feelings of love.
How does that work?
Same principle. The negative experience creates strong physiological arousal. And because it's happening in the context of that person, you might unconsciously attribute some of that intensity to your feelings for them.
So a massive fight could, weirdly, leave you feeling more intensely connected, at least temporarily, because of all the emotional and physical churn.
Potentially, yes. It's definitely what Gavrilyuk calls an unorthodox assessment. This idea that love might sometimes be essentially a misunderstanding of why our bodies are freaking out.
Okay, my head's spinning a bit. Misinterpreting arousal, uncertainty fueling feelings. But then Stuart Valens's research comes in, adding another twist. Does the arousal even need to be real?
Ah, Valens. Yeah, he asked a great question. Is it the actual physical change or just the belief that it's happening?
And he tested this with fake heartbeats in Playboy pictures.
Dang
Sounds
it.
like a classic study.
It really is. So guys were shown pictures of nudes, and they heard what they thought was their own heartbeat amplified. But the researchers were actually controlling the sounds.
Rigging the feedback. What happened? For some pictures, they made the heartbeat sound speed up. For others, it stayed normal or slowed down. And consistently, the men rated the women whose pictures were paired with the fake, faster heartbeat as more attractive.
No way. So they thought, my heart's racing for her, she must be amazing, even though their actual heart wasn't necessarily doing that.
Pretty much. The belief that they were aroused by a particular image was enough to increase their attraction rating for the person in that image.
That is wild. Our beliefs about our bodies can literally change how attractive we find someone.
And get this, some follow-up work suggested that believing your heart rate changed could eventually lead to an actual change in your real heart rate when looking at those same pictures again later.
Mind blown. The mind-body connection is just, wow.
But crucially, culture shapes this too. Gavrilyuk points out they tried a similar setup with images of male nudes and female participants. The fake accelerated heartbeat didn't exactly boost attraction there. Often, it led to disgust.
Right. So it's not just perceived arousal. It's perceived arousal interpreted through our cultural lens of what's considered desirable or appropriate.
Absolutely. Social norms, learned preferences, they heavily influence how we make sense of those internal or perceived internal signals.
Okay, this is a lot. Definition problems, interpreting arousal, uncertainty, belief. What's next in understanding this thing called love?
The next piece is transfer of arousal. This one's pretty intuitive once you grasp it.
Okay, lay it on me.
The idea is simple. Arousal from one source can leak over and intensify your reaction to a second, completely unrelated source you encounter soon after.
Like being amped up from exercise makes you react more strongly to something else.
Exactly. And the key is you might mistakenly attribute all that heightened feeling to the second thing.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Like having too much coffee, then someone cuts you off in traffic, and you just lose it way more than you normally would. You blame the driver, not the caffeine buzz.
Perfect analogy. And Joanne Cantor's study with guys exercising and then watching erotic films illustrates this perfectly in a more relevant context.
Right, the exercise and movie clips. How did she set that up again?
She had one group watch the erotic clips immediately after exercise, while they were still physically buzzed. Another group had a 5-minute cool down first.
And the difference.
The guys who watched right away mostly chalked up their feelings to the workout. Makes sense. But the group that had the short break, they still had some leftover arousal from the exercise, but it wasn't as obvious.
So they felt amped up watching the movie.
And they attributed that amplified feeling mostly to the movie itself, rating it as more arousing than the other group did. The leftover exercise buzz got transferred and mislabeled as purely sexual arousal from the film.
So Gavrilyuk's point is, could this happen with love or attraction? Could going on a thrilling date, like, I don't know, ziplining, make you feel more attracted to the person you're with?
Absolutely. That shared adrenaline, that excitement, your brain might easily misinterpret some of that buzz as, wow, I must really be falling for this person.
Even if it's negative excitement, like watching a scary movie together.
Potentially, yes. Remember the Dutton-Ahrens Scary Bridge study?
Oh yeah, the shaky bridge. Men on the high, unstable bridge were more likely to call the attractive female researcher afterwards than guys on a sturdy bridge.
Exactly. They likely misattributed their fear-induced arousal, pounding heart, sweaty palms as attraction to her. The bridge made them feel shaky, but they thought it was love.
It's just incredible how easily our wires can get crossed, physiologically speaking.
It really is. Our brains are constantly trying to make sense of bodily signals, and sometimes the explanation they land on isn't quite right.
Okay, so we've covered definitions, interpretation, uncertainty, belief, transfer. Now the chapter seems to take a big turn towards evolutionary psychology.
Right. This shifts the focus to those deeper, often unconscious drives. The idea that some of our choices, especially around relationships and attraction, might be shaped by genetic legacies, by what helped our ancestors survive and reproduce.
Survival of the fittest, but applied to love lives.
Kind of, yeah. Gavrilyuk discusses research by folks like Stephen Gangestad and Christine Garver-Apgar, looking at how women's mate preferences might shift subtly during their ovulatory cycle.
Ah, okay. What did they find?
Well, the suggestion is that around ovulation, when fertility is highest, women might show a slight, often unconscious increase in attraction towards men exhibiting traditionally masculine traits, maybe dominance, competitiveness, the so-called bad boy type, perhaps.
Okay, and outside of that fertile window.
The preference tends to lean more towards traits associated with good long-term partners. Reliability, kindness, resources, faithfulness.
Yeah.
The good dad type, maybe.
So it's like a potential biological strategy. Seek out good genes when conception is possible, but prioritize good provider traits the rest of the time.
That's the evolutionary logic proposed, yes. And James Roney's work supports this view. He found women with higher estrogen levels peaking around ovulation-rated men with higher testosterone levels as more attractive.
It all points to this underlying, maybe unconscious drive related to reproductive fitness.
Exactly. Gavrilyuk even notes that women already in stable relationships might feel this pull towards more macho types more strongly during ovulation than single women do.
Suggesting a kind of biological nudge towards genetic diversity, maybe, even if they're happy.
It's complex, but that's one interpretation. A potential evolutionary compromise between securing good genes for offspring and maintaining a stable pair bond for raising them.
Fascinating, and maybe a little unsettling. But evolution's influence doesn't stop at just picking mates, right? The chapter talks about broader cognitive effects.
Absolutely. Vladis Griscovicius's work is key here. He talks about these financial and prosocial biases. Basically, we tend to view attractive people more favorably in all sorts of ways.
Like we trust them more easily, think they're more competent.
Yeah, in economic games, in judging their honesty, even sometimes in hiring. It's a subtle bias, this attractiveness halo.
And Griscovicius did that sunglasses experiment too, didn't he? The one near the lingerie store.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. So they had a shelf with two types of sunglasses, popular ones and flashy, unique ones. The Elvis Presley sunglasses, as Gavrilyuk calls them.
Ha! Love that description.
They put this shelf either outside a normal shop or right by a lingerie store. And guess what?
Let me guess. Guys near the lingerie store went for the flashy Elvis glasses.
Bingo. Significantly more often. The subtle erotic cue seemed to unconsciously trigger a desire to stand out, to signal their own desirability or status.
Wow. Just the proximity to bras and things changed their sunglasses preference.
It seems so. It's that deep-seated drive to compete and attract. Griscovicius also looked at women as unconscious muses.
Right, the creativity study. Men waited either alone or with an attractive woman, then did an art task.
Exactly. And the guys who waited with the attractive woman, their artwork was rated as significantly more creative, more expressive, more complex.
So just her presence somehow sparked their creative drive as an unconscious way to impress her.
That's the interpretation, an unconscious attempt to sort of woo the muse through demonstrating skill and flair.
It's amazing how these evolutionary echoes can shape behavior in areas that seem totally unrelated to mating.
It really is. And then Gavrilyuk dives into the neurophysiology, what's actually firing in the brain and body.
Okay, brain scans and biology, Alessandra Rollini's work on measuring desire.
Yes. She looked at physiological responses, heart rate, blood pressure, genital arousal, alongside people's self-reported feelings when viewing neutral versus erotic images.
And she found differences between men and women.
Quite distinct ones. For men, generally what they said, they felt lined up pretty well with what their bodies were doing. Cognitive report matched physiological arousal.
But not always for women.
Often, no. Women frequently showed a disconnect. Their bodies might register clear physiological arousal to erotic stimuli, but they would report feeling less aroused or sometimes even deny it cognitively.
Why the difference? Did Gavrilyuk offer an explanation?
The evolutionary perspective suggests it might relate to the higher potential biological cost of sex for women, pregnancy, childbirth, etc. This could lead to a greater, perhaps unconscious caution or filtering mechanism between physiological response and conscious acknowledgement of desire.
That makes a certain kind of evolutionary sense. What about hormones? Vandermeit's testosterone studies.
Also fascinating, he found men's testosterone levels could rise simply from being in the presence of a woman, even if they didn't consciously rate her as particularly attractive.
Just being near a woman boosts testosterone.
Apparently so. And this hormonal shift correlated with subtle behavioral changes, warmer voice tone, more gestures, more eye contact, like the body's getting ready for potential courtship even before the brain consciously decides, I'm interested.
Wow. Biology running ahead of conscious thought. And Anna Rose Childress's brain imaging, what pathways did she map?
She used fMRI to look at brain activity in response to sexual cues. She identified a key circuit involving the amygdala for initial emotional reaction, then the ventral striatum, which is crucial for dopamine release, pleasure, reward.
The brain's wanting center.
Sort of, yeah. And then the median frontal cortex, which seems to act like a cognitive control or sensor on these impulses.
And again, gender differences.
Yes. Men tended to show less activity, less suppression in that frontal cortex area compared to women when viewing the same stimuli. Less top-down inhibition of the initial response.
Gavrilyuk's example was the male driver slowing down slightly when seeing an attractive pedestrian.
Exactly. A fleeting activation of that reward circuit, quickly overridden by the rational need to, keep driving safely, but a glimpse of that underlying neural response.
So these deep circuits are there. He also mentioned evolutionary links to things like helping behavior and jealousy.
Right. Chris Gavicius found single women who'd just interacted with an attractive guy were then more likely to help another woman. The interpretation, unconsciously signaling good mother potential.
Wow. Okay. And jealousy.
B. Bunk's classic finding. Women tend to be more upset by emotional infidelity, men by sexual infidelity. An evolutionary explanation might link this to paternal uncertainty for men and resource diversion for women, though Gavrilyuk stresses culture plays a big role here too.
It's like these ancient scripts are still running in the background.
Very much so. The chapter also touches on individual differences. Not everyone experiences sensuality the same way. Lori Brado's work with women having low desire shows therapy can help.
And asexuality.
Mentioned too, yeah.
Yeah.
A small percentage identify as asexual, suggesting a possible biological component to variations in sexual interest. Plus, Dean Hamer's work linking specific genes, dopamine, serotonin, related to things like risk-taking in sex or libido levels.
So our genes definitely deal us different hands when it comes to sensuality.
It appears so. But, and this is crucial, Gavrilyuk doesn't end there. It's not all biology and unconscious drives. Cognition matters. Meaning matters.
So our thoughts and feelings can override the evolutionary programming.
They can certainly moderate it. Marge Hasselton's research is highlighted here. She showed that the meaning and importance we attach to a relationship can powerfully influence those more basic urges.
How did she show that?
She had couples focus on recalling one of two things. Either a time of intense sexual connection or a time of intense love and emotional connection.
Okay, priming different aspects of the relationship.
Exactly. And the results were striking. Those who focus on the deep love experience subsequently became more protective of their relationship.
Oh, so.
They rated photos of attractive strangers as less appealing, and they spent less time looking at those photos compared to the group that focused on the sexual memory.
Wow. So actively thinking about the love and commitment made them kind of immunized against temptation.
In a way, yes. It suggests that when the relationship's meaning and emotional depth are brought to the forefront of the mind, it can dampen the automatic responses to potential alternatives. The cognitive value placed on the bond overrides the more fleeting, perhaps evolutionary-driven, attraction cues.
So it really is this incredibly complex mix: biology, arousal, interpretation, uncertainty, belief, evolution, and conscious thought and meaning.
Absolutely. That's the big takeaway from Gavrilyuk's chapter, I think. Love isn't just one thing. It's this dynamic interplay of physiological processes, cognitive interpretations heavily shaped by culture, and these deep-seated evolutionary legacies, all moderated by the specific meaning and commitment we build within a relationship.
And it's kind of mind-bending to realize how much of this happens outside our awareness, how easily a racing heart from climbing stairs or seeing a scary movie or even just believing our heart is racing could be mistaken for or could amplify feelings of attraction or love.
It is humbling, isn't it? It highlights how much our experience is constructed, interpreted. We're not just passively receiving signals. We're actively making sense of them, sometimes getting it wrong, sometimes being influenced by forces we don't even recognize.
Which really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it, for everyone listening?
The final thought. Knowing all this, the misinterpretations, the uncertainty effects, the evolutionary nudges, the power of belief and meaning, how does that change how you look at your own relationships?
What hidden factors might be influencing your feelings, past or present, that you never considered before? Definitely food for thought.
Indeed. Until next time.
Thanks for joining our deep dive.